So we're going to start the rabbit hole today with the movie Crash and Burn from 1990. It's another Charles Band movie. Um, the prolific film director and producer of many B movies, and has a few companies. Full Moon being the most well known. If you don't know who he is, he's responsible for the Puppet Master films and various other things. I actually covered Demonic Ties in a different video. So, in case you didn't know, in the early 90s, there was sort of a universe of giant mech movies, Robot Jocks being the most famous. In that Charles Band, his father Albert, produced a series of movies like this. It was Robot Jocks, Robot Wars, which was also called Robot Jocks 2. There was Robo Warriors, also Robot Jocks 3, and Crash and Burn. Crash and Burn was not set in the same universe as the other three, but the title Crash and Burn actually comes from a catchphrase that the guys in Robot Jocks use. So in Robot Jocks, it's post-nuclear apocalypse, and instead of having wars anymore because we've learned our lesson, we just have big fucking giant robot fights between two nations. But maybe it got a theatrical release. Let's take a look. I doubt it. It did. Barely. But a $10 million budget, though. That's not too shabby for a movie like that. But I presume it made all its money on home video. Robot Wars was much worse. But come on, look at the robots. It's worth it for that alone. I never saw the one with James Remar. If you don't know who poor James Remar is, he was cast as Hicks in Aliens, and he actually lost the role because of drugs. I cannot remember the ins and outs of the story, but he was cast as Hicks. He was filming in England, and he got the sack, and Michael Biehn took over. He had a career outside of that. Like he was in the Warriors, like, which is an awesome film. So he started off in kind of A movies, and he finished up in B movies, unfortunately. But I mean, so did Michael Biehn, I suppose. But yeah, The Warriors is a great movie. You haven't seen it. I mean, you probably heard of it because Rockstar Games made an underrated video game of it one time that I actually never played. But anyway, back to Crash and Burn. So normally I go through the directors, but there's absolutely no way we could do that amount of movies. Pre-Hysteria, worth noting. Pre-Hysteria came out in the wave of Jurassic Park, rush, we'll say, and I remember watching that movie, and that stars, isn't that the kid from Austin O'Brien? Yeah, so he was the kid in Last Action Hero. Oh, pretty cool, right? And he was also in My Girl 2. He was Macaulay Culkin's replacement in My Girl 2, and I can also see that he was in The Lawnmower Man. I do not remember him in The Lawnmower Man. Oh yeah, no, now I know. Yeah, there was a kid in The Lawnmower Man. That was him. Forgot that one. Had that poster on my wall though when I was a little boy. Pretty cool, right? Jeff Fahey. What became of Jeff Fahey? Anyway, and the special effects in that movie looked awesome at the time. And funny enough, there's a guy. Did you ever hear the Branch Davidians, the David Koresh and that whole thing? Well, David Koresh was a Major League Lawnmower Man fan. I think he thought somehow that the Lawnmower Man somehow had to do with the end of the world, and David Koresh is placed as a Christ-like figure in the whole thing. Strange story. He also performed the song from the Saxophone Man song from The Lost Boys. I happened to see the TV series of it starring Taylor Quiche, and I looked it up like to see if that was true, and that was indeed true. So that's an awesome song. If you don't know it, if you get me drunk enough, I would play that song today and talk about how The Lost Boys is the greatest movie ever made, and blah blah blah. I don't really believe it's the greatest movie ever made, but that's besides the point. The first time I saw that movie, I slept with a crucifix under my pillow. Oh, and the basic plot of this movie is like so. It's the ozone layer has been destroyed, and there's like these heat storm things, and somehow a giant robot's going to save the day from something or other. I really can't remember. I saw it when I was very young. It was always kind of shit. There's an argument that Robot Jocks is sort of entertaining. Crash and Burn, not so much. Dude kind of looks like he kind of has a George Clooney kind of thing going on. Bill Moseley. Oh, he's the guy from isn't he in Texas Chainsaw Massacre? He is. He's Chop Top in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre sequel. Look at that cool robot. That's why I wanted to watch these movies when I was young. In fairness, there was no other giant mech movies that I know of from the era, so they were pretty unique. Ava LaRue seems to be the star of this. Let's take a look who she is. She's been in a lot of stuff. She's still acting away. Done 75 episodes of General Hospital, so she's in RoboCop 3, the bad one. Heart Condition. Now, Heart Condition is kind of an underrated movie. It's about a racist cop who has a heart condition, and he receives a heart transplant from a dead cop played by Denzel Washington. And then it's one of those ghost movies, like Hello Again, Shelley Long, where Denzel Washington's ghost is basically haunting Bob Hoskins. Maybe it's not as good as I remember it, but when I was a kid, I thought that was a cracker of a film. But Eva LaRue, she was in that. Okay, she has a named part as well, so not too bad. Let's see what else. The Barbarians. Now, do you remember the Barbarian Brothers? These dudes. They were two. I don't know were they twins or what. But they were like these big muscle steroid dudes. And they had a few movies. Look at those dudes. I don't know what became of them. Oh, she must have been the love interest in that. Looks like it anyway. I have a feeling that's a fun movie. That's your man from Say It For Me. The Hills Have Eyes. Ruggero. I feel like he did cannibal movies. He directed Cannibal Holocaust. There you go. There you go. I was thinking I recognized these. So he must have done the soundtrack too, because I saw sound there. So that's pretty cool. The director of Cannibal Holocaust directed The Barbarians, which was like he was nearly arrested, or he actually was arrested because people thought Cannibal Holocaust was real. Probably heard that whole story, and it's technically one of the first found footage horror films. And when that was banned for years, and I remember I went into this shop in Dublin called Forbidden Planet. I was in studying in college in the early 2000s, and I bought the videotape of that. It wasn't even out in DVD, and they re-released like video nasties from the early 80s, and that was one of them. And they still had cuts in it, like the way there's an actual, and you know what? It's not really missed, but there's a scene where they actually really kill a poor turtle in it, and they had it in the film, so they cut that out. Which, to be honest with you, I'm happy that they did in a way. But it's a good movie. It's disturbing. Like as a horror movie, it does exactly what you would want. And I tried to watch some of the other cannibal movies in that thing, and I'm kind of a sucker for trying to watch cannibal movies, but there's not that many good ones. So, Eva LaRue, Interesting. I just want to check David Paul and Peter Paul. What other movies they did? Double Trouble. Twin Sitters. Okay, so they tried to get in on the whole kindergarten cop thing. I don't know what it is about muscle men dudes and kind of children's movies. The babysitters. Okay, I get it now. They're twins and they're looking after twins. Cool. We never checked what Paul Gannis was actually in. Monolith. He had a role in Monolith. You ever hear of Monolith? Monolith was a movie with Bill Paxton, John Hurt, Lindsay Frost, Louis Gossett Jr. I remember seeing this. It's like kind of like it was a B movie, but it had kind of an A movie sort of production values almost. And it's from what I remember, there's a alien spaceship after crashing somewhere in, I'm going to say New York. It mightn't have been New York. And they're kind of like, there's kind of a buddy cop thing going on as well. It's sort of a mess. It wasn't that good. I'd actually like to see it again though, to see if it was better than I remember. Because I tell you one thing, they don't make them like that anymore. Anyway, let's check out who Megan Ward is. She's kind of familiar. Encino Man. So, in Ireland, Encino Man is called California Man, and of course that is the movie that made Brendan Fraser and Pauly Shore famous. And it also stars Sam Gamgee. I took the liberty of checking, and Megan Ward was indeed the love interest. Eva LaRue was a flirty TV host. She was trying to get off with your man, but he only had eyes for Megan. Okay. What a dreamboat. I wouldn't mind hair like that. Now. So, the most interesting thing I probably came across about this whole situation was Albert Band, who is the father of Charles, produced this movie. Troll, he produced that. And what's fun about that is everybody knows about Troll 2. But Troll 1 was an interesting movie in its own right. And it is most famous these days by the name Harry Potter. So, the kid, now to be clear about this, right? So, the lead kid in this movie, his name is, as a character, Harry Potter. And strangely, he's played by the kid who was that kid in the Never-Ending Story. You know, if you've seen the Never-Ending Story, you will remember the pure horror of that horse being trapped in the fucking quicksand, mud, swamp place. It was one of the most disturbing things I ever saw when I was a child. So, that's interesting. So, I didn't actually know. You always hear the name, the Harry Potter thing, but I never actually knew that there was a direct fantasy movie connection to the two things. Now, to conclude, so what did we learn today in this rabbit hole? Well, number one, the girl who was the love interest in Crash and Burn was in California Man. Amazing stuff. There was a multitude of giant mech movies from the late 80s and early 90s, more than one would have thought. It's also pretty cool. We learned that the Barbarians, these two dudes, were actually directed by the guy who directed Cannibal Holocaust. You know, that's the most interesting thing that I came across. So, not bad for a day's work. I bet you're glad you stuck around to the very end.